I'm Sargent with the Alarm Museum. We're in San Francisco at the Fairmont Hotel for the December 2022 California Alarm Association.
Welcome, I'm Ralph Sevinor, again with the Alarm Museum. We have the distinct pleasure of introducing an old friend of the alarm industry, BART DIDDEN, president of USA, a third-party monitoring facility that has several locations around the country, and also really an icon in the industry. So Bart, I'd like to turn it over to you, and maybe you can give us a little snapshot of how you started. Take us as a kid.
Oh, thank you, Ralph. Happy to be here. That term icon, it just doesn't feel that great, They started this icon thing back in about over, I think it's 25 years now or something. There was a magazine, and we were actually here in San Francisco.
Oh my goodness, that's right. Right. Is that 25 years ago? 20?
Yeah,
that's
something
right.
like that.
At the CAA.
Yeah, it was a security dealer.
Right.
And there was, I think
Bob Boniface was there.
Yeah, the West
Falls were there.
There was a whole bunch of us, and
it goes quick, doesn't it?
It really does. So, but I'm from Portchester, New York. That's where I grew up, and USA is still based there. My dad was in the butcher business, and so was my grandfather, and that's where I learned my customer skills. I started out by sweeping floors, stocking shelves. Then I, promoted to bagging.
How old are you about the time?
Oh, I started at, on Saturdays at like 10. Yeah,
cheap labor.
Yeah, and eventually, progressing through the ranks, and I think when I was about 14 or 15, probably 14, I got a knife, and and I wasn't doing the expensive cuts. It was just like, here's a chuck, bone it out, and that I was chop meat, But I also would be started working behind the counter, and people, mostly ladies. There was no plastic packaging. There was no helping yourself. It was all full service. And they come in and like, what do you think I want to eat tonight? And in the back of my mind, like, how do I know? But you start going through the case, and my grandfather was a real artist. He would build a display case, and your mouth would water over the possibilities from the presentation. He was really an artist.
And that was in Portchester?
Mamaroneck, 10 miles down the road. So that's where I learned, customer service, people skills, how to talk with people and stuff. And but as I got closer to finishing high school, I was like, you know what, this is not for me. And I got out of that, enrolled in college, and dropped out in my first semester. My mother was an accountant, my brother's an accountant, my son is a CPA. So between the entrepreneurial side and the math and stuff, accounting was the norm, but I didn't believe in English and social studies to become a well-rounded individual to get a college degree. Accounting, 1 + 1 is 2, unless you're doing taxes, and then it's whatever the hell you want it to be. So I got out of that, and I was like, nah, I need to go into business. So I started off in distribution, food product distribution, and I met my best friend from high school, Mike Backer, and Don Sperber had this alarm company, and they were like, hey, we're gonna buy this building in Portchester, and we're gonna open up a central station. I'm like,
and about what year is this?
81. So I was thinking about this. Central Station. Now I knew what a central station was theoretically.
Bless you.
Thank you. We had an alarm in the house, and people call, what's the code? And I started looking at that, and I was like, wow, big difference between distribution and this, because there's only so far you can send a truck, only so far you can go in a day. Central Station business, wide open, coast to coast, no limitations. So I said to them, I said, hey, I want to be involved, and they thought I wanted a job. I was like, no. So the three of us got together, and using their alarm company accounts as the base, and I did all the sales, and I was running the thing.
Now, about how many accounts did you start the Central Station with?
The first night,
Right.
12.
Wow.
There was no portable phone numbers. Central Stations didn't give you an individual number that you could take with you.
Right.
So during the day, the girls in the office for the alarm company would be monitoring the signals until we started hiring employees, and then we had a night guy for the overnights, but whenever we had time, we were out reprogramming accounts, Mike and Don's accounts. So
what kind of technology did you have there at the beginning? Is this McCullough direct wire?
no, it was all digital.
All digital.
Digital.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we did install a Seaboard.
Oh, yeah, radio network.
Telemetry, and Jerry Hacker.
Mhm.
He was down in New Rochelle. That was only about 13 miles down the road, and at that time there was the biggest competitor at the time was AMSES.
New Jersey, I think?
Yeah, Roselle, New Jersey, and they had a Seaboard system that was up. So and it just seemed like a logical path, So we're moving along, and as I'm out trying to do sales, I get a lot of alarm companies in the area. They're like, oh no, your partners, you guys are the competition. So I recognized early on that there had to be a Chinese wall. No shared systems, no shared employees, and it had to be this wall. And to Don and Mike's credit, once we established the wall, and and the ground rules were down, they understood it. They may not have been exactly thrilled about it, but they understood it. And so USA has been BART DIDDEN, my personality, and the personality of my people since 1982.
So you really started it. You were sort of that guy.
Yeah, I was that guy. And so besides going out and reprogramming all-time accounts, I would help other alarm companies go out and reprogram. I was reprogramming. You want to talk about burning chips, or even better, if you go to the 616, the Ademco, everything was a number, and if you, that's how you can tell if somebody's been in this industry. If they could talk alarm ease about what is a 669, and screw type.
Yeah.
The screw type's unbelievable.
And they were so small. Do you remember the nuts were in? Oh, it was crazy.
But what was even worse is that you would go and you would try and reprogram one, but if it did a lot of communicating over the years, it was burnt in
Right.
to the panel. So now you're at a customer's place. You tried to reprogram it. It's not working. It's still going to the other place, but like maybe a digit or something is now different on the account. Oh, what a nightmare. So so I've seen a lot of technology changes. So that's back in the early '80s. The next, I'd say,
And refresh my memory, at the time, everything was a different format. You had Cisco, you had Franklin, you had Osborne Hoffman, you had all these, every manufacturer had their own unique language, right? So you had
there
to-
was some unique ones. The good thing for where I was in this ecosystem is that Ademco was on Long Island. You know, that was less than an hour drive.
Right.
You know, and NAPCO is in Amityville. You know, an hour drive, and they were the two primary hardware suppliers, and they were both working in like the same realm. So yeah, Franklin, Cisco, Osborne Hoffman, they really never impacted the tri-state market.
Interesting.
So and then the others that were in line with Ademco and NAPCO was FBI and AdCore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know, they were all in that same realm.
Yeah.
But you know, I just want to go back for a second. You know, the major competitor I mentioned was AMSEST and you know, Murray Hermlin, and it's probably a real vacuum that we don't have him to do one of these interviews, because Murray did more for this industry than he'll ever get credit for. He gave the alarm industry a business plan. He's like, no more tape dialers. Get rid of those things. You take this box, and he would rent you the digital communicator and the monitoring for $7 a month. Okay? And he says, what you do, you put this in instead of the tape dialer. You're gonna charge the customer $15 a month. We're gonna call to verify.
I've got a fair few family Christmases under my belt now. One thing I've learned.
Cut.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So, okay. So what Murray would do is he would charge 15, yeah, he would get 7 for him, $15, you know, you would resell it to the end user. We would call and verify for the code, call the police, call the subscriber, and call the alarm company. He gave everybody, that was the basis of RMR for the independent alarm dealer in this industry. And it was a business plan, as simple as it was. And now, you know, fast forward 20 or 25 years, when video started coming around, and people would be calling me, hey, video, it's just gonna solve everything. I was like, okay. I said, have you done any focus groups? No. Do you know what the end user's willing to pay for this? No. But you can do all this. I said, I don't care. You gotta understand the alarm guys. They need a plan. They're not gonna build a plan. They're not gonna figure it out. They just need a roadway with guardrails and someone that say, go. And that's what Murray Hermlin did for the alarm industry.
Is he still around?
Oh, no, he passed a long time ago. But, so now the alarm industry with this, you know, business plan, and then, you know, there's some guys like me and others in the New York market that started to open up their own central stations. You know, I think Affiliated was like 4 years before me, but it was all about relationships, and I immediately got involved in the Alarm Association.
Of New York.
Yeah, there was 2 in New York, competing entities, and you know, I took the one that was not in the New York City market. It was the rest of the state, and we had our meetings in White Plains, and I got started in the association work, and using that as really fertile ground to meet dealers. So because you didn't have ADIs and other, and you had small independent distributors. Remember, like David Block, remember
Yeah,
him?
yeah.
And Alarm Warehouse, and
New Bright Industries.
New Bright, yeah, so Mountain in
Yeah.
Summit, New Jersey, and you really didn't. Nobody hung around at the distributors, so it was the association work. And then as USA is growing and continues to grow, I got involved. One of my best friends, Danny Budnoff, got me involved in the National Training School. And I started teaching level 1 classes around New York State. It was that was in the late 80s, and we took the training school and then made that the basis for alarm licensing in New York State. I'll get to that in a second. But so I'm doing this training, and it was a lot of fun meeting a lot of guys, and USA's really, I probably said this, I'll say it again, it's a relationship business.
Yeah.
While you do these interviews, you'll find some of my competitors that are like, I'm the biggest, I do this, I do that, I put on X amount of counts a month, and and someone will advertise, I'm the biggest, and then somebody else will come in, I'm the biggest, and for me it was never about that. USA could have been just as huge as the top 5.
Bigger is not better.
Bigger is not better, and a lot of this will weave back together as we go through this interview, but I always told my people, if we're not having fun here doing it, what's the point? We can sell it, we can go do something else, but we're not limited to anything, but if we gotta have fun. With the training school, I started to get involved with MBFAA a little bit, and when the training school started to do level 2, Danny and I co-authored level 2B, which was controls and communicators. And this is where people in this industry, I don't know, have you done Leo Goodhart?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yes.
wonderful individual. But he had an incredible talent of finding great people to work
He did.
with him.
Yeah.
And one of them was Steve Winnick.
Yes.
So when I wrote the communications section, Danny wrote the panels, I wrote the communications section. I went out to Steve Winnick for 2 days, and that's when I learned about spread spectrum and other RF communication methodologies that I used to write, that's that section of level 2. So, and then it just started to snowball to where I got appointed to fill an unexpired term as treasurer at MBFAA, and then moved up through those positions to where I was president of MBFAA from 2000 to 2002. And I mean, what a roller coaster and adventure, because before Y2K, Rudy Giuliani, mayor of New York City, had a Y2K task force.
Mm-hmm.
So they needed somebody to go attend for the industry. I was 32, and I'm representing the industry, and their question to me was, well, what's going to happen at Y2K? And I'm like, really? And they're like, well, are all the electronic doors going to pop open?
Right.
Is
Valid questions, by the way.
oh yeah, is our fire alarms just going to turn off?
Right.
And I was like, no, that's one thing I did know, about fire alarm systems. They don't know what time it is. They just have a clock that ticks. It's second after second after second. There was no big smarts, back in 1999 and before that. So I said, no, fire alarms are going to be fine. Access doors, I'll have to go do a little research on.
Which, it's interesting because some of the people looking at this have no knowledge of Y2K and the pandemonium it created. They thought planes were going to fall out of the sky, trains were going to stop, power plants were going to go offline.
Yeah.
There was a lot of hysteria on that.
Yeah, there was, and I mean, hey, I'm a new grandfather 2 years ago now, and now I have two grandsons under the age of 2. Payphone?
Right.
Dial a number. I mean, I'm sure somebody said something in these interviews about tape dialers.
Right.
Stand by for an emergency message. Right. I mean, it crazy. But the best thing that happened to me in my professional development was being president of NBFA. NBFA was the largest association of installing dealers.
And oldest.
And oldest. Started in, I think, 56 or 57.
I think before.
Because as a buying cooperative,
right.
Because AT&T wasn't broken up yet, and after World War II, supplies were so short. You couldn't buy wire, you couldn't get dry cell batteries. So the alarm companies had to all come together and act as a group for their own survival. So, but what that did was, back then we had we used to use AOL, and there was that instant messenger.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we had that in my office, so that even though the woman who was running my company at that time was in the next room, I was out of the office for like 3 days a week. I may have been there, but I wasn't there for USA, and they would instant message me, and I delegated authority like playing cards, and that made better employees for me and for USA and for the customer experience. And I forget who, but somebody told me, when an employee comes and asks you a question, it's usually they have the answer already. So I would just say to them, I say, hey, what do you think the answer is going to be? And they would be like, okay, I think this is going to be your answer. I was like, well, you're right. So why did you come here?
Reinforcement.
Yeah. So today, after 40 years, USA has employees that have been with it over 30 years or 20 years. I mean, a lot of people that have been with me, and I'm very fortunate for so many years. And if you asked me 40 years ago about somebody retiring, working for me, I was like, are you kidding me? But last June, we had a guy that retired after 37 years.
Amazing.
But when I hired him,
makes you feel good, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. It really does. But when I hired him, he was like in between job situations, and he was like, I'm only going to be here for like 3 or 4 months. I mean, it's just crazy. Yeah. So that was like around 2000, but starting in 1995, we were UL listed, and I started complaining to UL and to the industry at large. I was like, my UL listing is the same as your UL listing, which is the same as this guy's UL listing, but he's in a basement. He's got a ratty generator that he has to roll out. I have a Caterpillar generator on a pad. I was like, this is not, and I also said, because we were really growing at the time as well. I was like, when you get to a point, you got to have some more kinds of redundancies. You just can't have a tape backup that you got, that you can just load in. You got to have more. So even though it took UL 20 years and the industry 20 years to put it together, they finally have done that.
You refer to the mu factor.
The mu factor, also, two sets of computers or three sets, one location or two locations. There's all
Fully manned, right?
Yeah, there's all of those different caveats in there.
I think the end result of that was good.
Oh yeah,
That was a real consensus process.
yes. Well, okay, so consensus process. This industry is stellar. I mean, they are perfect at shooting themselves in the foot. Okay. Again, the best example is state licensing. I mentioned that before about training and stuff. In New York State, we went and got state licensing because in Westchester County, you needed 26 different licenses.
Wow.
And it only takes you 45 minutes to cross the county on either axis. 26. And back then, the law said that each town couldn't keep your fingerprints. So ADT lost a month every year sending their techs around to go get fingerprinted. So I was one of the major involved people. I was president of the state association around this time in the early 90s when we started lobbying for the state license. And another blast from the past, one of the guys that I learned so much from was Philip Kleiman from AFA.
Sure.
And
That was the father.
yeah, and what a great guy. And we had a great time together. He was old enough to be my grandfather, and but I learned so much from him, and I think he learned some stuff from me too. But we got the New York State law passed, but I purposely excluded central stations. I was like, look, why? And so many states, and I'm not going to rattle them off, but so many other state associations, when they went and got licensing in their states, they did it for predatory protection.
I would agree.
And this is where the industry has shot itself, because I'm here in New York at the time with just the one location, and some states you had to send your operators there. Some, they tried doing that. They had to get fingerprints only that were approved from that state, which was only meant that it was stupidity on top of stupidity. And the time and effort, and John, from ADT days, you guys probably had a whole office suite of people to do licensing and compliance, all over the place. I mean, what a waste, of everything.
And the states love it because they're making money at it.
They're not making money. That's the thing with politicians and bureaucrats. And I happen to represent that image because I'm still an elected official in my, Portchester. Once they have some sort of authority, they just run wild with it. And give it up, can never give it up. It's job protection, it's so many things. And I have yet to really see how a regulator that's 1,000 miles from me or 3,000 miles away from me is going to really do consumer advocacy or consumer protection for an office that is licensed locally where they are. So there, and how many times has the industry talked about reciprocity and working together? But then you have companies like ADT that says we're not interested in it because we've done it all and we've made this investment, and why are we going to now make it easier for somebody else, you know? So,
Right,
so again, the industry shooting itself in the foot. So, you know, so all these things, and Ralph, you know, well, both of you know, that I'm an opinionated person, and I'm never shy about, you know, sharing my opinions. And probably the other place where we shot ourselves in the foot is the trade shows, ISC. You know, I was there when that negotiation was going on, and there was some old stalwarts in our industry that were like, "That's our show. You know, we should own it. They should give us more money." And they took this hardline position, and the manufacturers said, "No, you know, we don't have to listen to this small group of the industry." And that's when we got we got the raw end of the deal. And you know, we're the only industry that doesn't own its own trade show, that throws off millions that could be used to better our industry, help us develop more employees and better practices, and do a lot of the great work that needs to be done. But
you would agree
we missed
that ESX is growing.
ESX is growing, you know, but it's no ISC.
Right.
You know, it's doing its job for ESA, and but you know, we just again shot ourselves in the foot. So, and the other place where we shot ourselves in the foot, and you and I have been on either side of the fence on this, is that we have one group for central stations, we have another group for installation and service companies, and then we have a third group for manufacturers. So it's 3 staffs, 3 executive directors, you know, 3 of everything.
Yeah.
You know, and what a waste.
So
you know?
at that time, because I was attending those too, you know, were you in favor of consolidating?
So,
Because I personally was.
so I was, I called your boss, well, the chairman of ADT at the time, I forget his name. I knew this was gonna come up and I forgot.
Yeah, but actually, I was dealing with it at Security Link before we became sold to Tyco.
Neil Cox, was it?
And we had pulled out of the associations. And
Well-
I talked to Neil Cox about coming back in, and I brought him back in. And then he saw the value, but of course he got a chairman position or something.
But I called the president of ADT and I said to him, I said, "Hey, you need to pull out of CSAA."
So that would have probably been Mike Snyder?
Mike Snyder.
Yes.
I called up Mike. Mike was a
And I
great
was
guy.
on CSA at the time.
Yeah, well, that's why I say
It was
we were on
difficult.
opposite
Yeah.
sides of the fence. So when I went to the industry and I said, "Look, we got to put it all together. We got to get the show back under control, that it's ours, not Reed's and so on." And I said, "Look, I have 2. No, I had 1. I had one thing that I had to have. The state association structure had to remain in place."
Mhm.
I told the group, I said, "Here's the name, NBFAA, throw it away, don't care. Here's our money, you know." It was like million plus something. "Here's the money, take it, you know, bylaws, rules, procedures, names. Oh, National Training School, here's the training school." I put it all there on the table. All you gotta do is maintain the representation of the small alarm company across the country through the state structures. And the stalwarts in CSAA, no way. The executive, and I said, my executive director, you know, at the time, I said, "You don't want them? There's the sidewalk, you know, don't have to have them. You know, my staff, any of them you don't like, there's the sidewalk, Thank you. It's been fun. I put up no restrictions, but the executive director from CSAA wanted nothing to do with it. Hey, that job was a cushy job, and and he didn't want to lose.
Small group.
He didn't want to lose a cushy job, and the executive director over at SIA, was they had gotten rid of one person, and Ron was there.
Ron Spiller.
But Ron knew that Chase was going to be coming up, so Ron didn't want to goof it up because he saw his legacy going in a direction, so the two of them were like, no, you can't do it, can't do this, why should we do this? And so it failed. But
I wouldn't necessarily say it failed because, maybe if the approach was almost an umbrella, like NFPA does it, all these different panels, and maybe we keep, and it's another discussion, but you keep the individual associations, but one staff over everyone.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the other thing we had was we had this giant board of directors. We had
Yes.
all these people from all these different states, and
That never
my
spoke, and
goodness,
all of a
the
sudden
one
they
thing
got their-
I learned from this guy, and I've used it once in another nonprofit organization, but there were people always saying, you can't do that. It's not, the bylaws won't let you do it. And I heard this guy say, well then, I'll make a motion to waive the bylaws. Waive the bylaws? You can't waive the bylaws. Show me where I can. He was right.
well, I was wrong.
Okay, all right.
So
It was very thought-provoking.
But and you know where that happened? That happened here in San Francisco, across the street at the Stafford Arms. And the reason why it happened is that this is a great story, but the association goofed up on the
Which association?
NBFA on the nominating process, and we didn't hit the timing marks correctly for the vote that was going to happen that day. Yeah, so Robert's Rules of Order, I'm going through it, I'm reading, and it says, oh, there's a section there, you can suspend the rules. So I took that, and the room was, the room wanted to get to the election. There wasn't a contested slate or anything, but the room wanted to move forward, but these certain mile marks weren't hit. So I got up, I said, nah, we can suspend the rules. And I intertangled rules and bylaws. So the association, they voted on the floor to throw out the bylaws. We've shot through the election, and then there was a guy who he didn't know, but he kind of knew that this could be trouble.
Right.
He's like, I make a motion to reinstate the rules. And so they reinstated the rules, and life went on. But I have learned since then, because between my political world and my volunteer fire department world, where I'm president of my fire company currently, in Robert's Rules, when it says suspend the rules, that's if you have that's where you suspend Robert's Rules. But you can never get rid of your bylaws. So, because that's in your incorporation papers and stuff.
No, if no one contests it, it goes.
Well, yeah, and hey, I must have really been a good salesperson that day, But yeah, so so besides, since I touch on these others, besides being president of USA, and as I I had other interests as well. As a young kid, I was in the fire department. I've recently gone back into the fire department. Portchester has about, in its fire service area, about 10 square miles, about 50,000 people. We have a all volunteer department, 300 volunteers, and for me, I'm the kind of designated the daytime ladder company chauffeur. So I get to play with the fun equipment. A brand new Seagrave 95-foot aerial scope, $1.7 million that they let me play with.
Wow.
And 80,000 pounds rolling down the street, and but I've driven a lot of big trucks and stuff. So, but anyway, so I do that, and then I'm also on the political side in my community as a trustee member of the community, which also designates to us that we're the fire wardens, and we're also the police commissioners. So there's a lot of different things that lap around that gives me a lot of personal satisfaction and keeps my mind going. Because if it was just about alarm stuff every day, I'd implode. But when the other thing I like to just bring up is Security America. The president before me at NBFAA had an idea about a industry-owned insurance company. When I was president, I commissioned the studies, and the president after me, Cecil Hogan, he pulled the trigger, and so Security America is going into its 20th year now. It's owned by the industry.
Us.
Yeah, us. And it's the only general liability and E&O provider for the industry, owned by the industry. And I've been on the board of directors since its inception. But after about the first 5 years, I think, we had a company doing the claims management, and I would see these claims reports come by. I was like, wait a minute, why did we pay for that? What do you mean we're paying for this? No. And this is why the industry everybody should get a quote and understand why we have an insurance company, because claims people don't understand the contracts, why we have contracts, and what we're responsible for and what we're not responsible for, and how we shift away that risk.
What's the website for that?
SecurityAmerica.com or SecurityAmericaRRG.com. But if they go to the ESA website, they can find it there.
Yeah. Is it still called Sarge?
Yeah, well, that was a nickname kind of thing. But anyway, so I took on the role of the executive claims manager, and I've processed more than 400 claims. I think I've processed more claims in this industry than practically anybody.
Amazing.
And alarm dealers would call up and they say, hey, I had this. I was like, okay, well, we need to pay them. I was like, no. I was like, the door got smashed. The alarm went off. Well, but the door got smashed. No, hey, that's why they have insurance. Your insurance is not their insurance. And why I've gone on a big kick about do not do additionally insured statuses and all kinds of stuff like that. But I've kind of curtailed out of it a little bit, because the TPA that we use now is using the attorneys I used to hire, and as long as they keep using the attorneys, because I get a claim
That are knowledgeable.
Well, I taught them. You know, I take out the contract with them over the phone. They have it on their screen. It's on mine. I said, look, this is the roadmap. And they look at you like deer in the headlights. I said, no, we don't pay. We have contracts. We shift risk. We do not charge for insurance. We are alarm companies. We're not insurers. And
the payments are just covering the cost of that service.
Yeah, you know, quid pro quo. And so that is, you know, so that's another area where I get a lot of satisfaction out of, because when I was in the middle of doing, you know, these claims, and I've lost a couple of, you know, decent ones. I'm not perfect, but when you took our program against our competitors, Scottsdale, Philadelphia, Hartford, Cincinnati, our loss runs were half.
Is that right?
Yeah, because you know, you put in a claim, you know, if you need homeowners insurance, go to Chubb, because you have a claim, they just take out the checkbook.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I had a car. You've probably seen it at one point. It caught fire on me. Yeah, and you know, I called, and it was a Chubb company, and you know, we're driving down the road. It started to smoke under the dashboard. Pull it over. You know, calling the claim, and okay, yeah, no, pick it up. Yeah, you know, and they're like, yeah, here's the book value. They went out and they hired experts, you know, to figure out what the value of the car was, and they just cranked me out a check, 6 digits. You know, it was like another day at the beach for them.
Wow.
You know, but as an industry, my job was to protect the integrity. Well, first thing was protect the integrity of the contract, because if we lose the contract, the value of our companies is
We become insurers.
Yeah.
Bring me up to date. So if someone, well, first, what are the biggest obstacles that we have today in the industry?
The biggest obstacles.
I know manpower is difficult, regulations are difficult, technology.
Well, this morning's speaker was very interesting about in engaging and bringing women into the workforce.
Right. Tim Hall.
Yeah, you know, I thought that was phenomenal.
Right.
And you know,
what was amazing to me was last night during the giant reception, I heard several different conversations where people saying, "I just can't find anybody.
Right.
I can't get anybody."
Yeah. So the Central Station is no different. And what we've done is we've developed a automated verification system that we're really proud of, where an alarm goes off and immediately we're blasting a SMS message out to a for a link to a web page where the customer can chat with the other people, but right there, black and white, dispatch or do not dispatch. And because today's society, nobody answers the phone.
Right.
Yeah.
If you don't recognize the phone number,
3/4 of the calls are junk.
Yeah.
Robocalls.
well, and 70% of the calls we make, nobody answers.
Right.
So and the other thing that the Central Station has become a babysitter to the alarm system. People are tripping these things left and right. The alarm companies aren't focused on the customer. They're focused on the next customer. This customer needs to be retrained, or the system needs to be modified. And the industry has left all that burden on the Central Stations, and the model just doesn't work anymore. So the Central Station industry is changing, but obstacles, legislation. I mean, we're here in the land of California. Talk about crazy legislation, but the privacy laws and all this, and the cost of compliance is just murder. When when the majority of our industry is made up of small to medium-sized alarm companies that are entrepreneurial in nature, and they're just making a great living and having a lifestyle if they choose. Some people just work till they die. They live to work instead of work to live. So that's really kind of where the obstacles are, and trying to keep up with the technology, from everybody around us, whether it's Google or Amazon or this one or that one. It's tough. And one of the things I'm concerned about is that we have outsourced a bunch of, like we lost the trade shows back in the mid-90s, okay? Now we have companies like Alarm.com that have all kinds of data on our customers. What's to say that they don't see a better route for them? And you have all these other industries and Google and stuff that have data on everything. We're not in a position, to keep up on that stuff, and that, I think that's where the upcoming disruptors are.
And how about the positive sides? What do you see that we should embrace? Either technology, sales, protocols.
We should be embracing the idea of traditional services, and communicating to our customers our values. And because everything today, like this phone, it's a throwaway. We have missed a great opportunity with our customers because we put in an alarm and they think it lasts forever. I mean, how many 1023s do you still have on the wall, and NAPCO 1486 dialers, digital communicators, and phone lines. I mean, they're probably the next biggest problem is going to be the POTS line.
Going away.
Completely. Yeah, going away completely. You get a storm in an area, and those copper lines are finished. They're gone.
Yeah.
And
we've already got a lot of that here.
Yeah. So they're just not going to put the wires back, and and everything's going wireless. So that's probably the first thing. But it's such a great industry, and there's great opportunities, and a lot of the stuff that we do, you can get such satisfaction out of. You install fire alarm systems. We call them fire alarm systems. They're really evacuation systems. They're not suppression systems.
Right.
They're a detection to get the people out of the house.
We save lives.
We save lives. And the sprinkler guys, even though they like to say that,
They save material.
they say, right, their thing is the building, not the people. So we really could refocus our viewpoint, our meaning, and make it so much better.
Yeah.
This is great.
Bart,
This is
it's
great.
been great having you here.
John?
Good day.
I really
Ralph,
appreciate
Great
it.
to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And by the way, thanks for all your contributions over the years. I know many times we don't agree, but many times we do agree. It's always been for the benefit of the industry. I think we all agree to that.
Yeah.
And so very few people can say what you've done to improve the industry.